Hello everyone, today is 28th of July. My name is Sahil and welcome to the newspaper analysis. Friends, in today's video, we will be taking up the entire analysis of the Hindu newspaper, good articles from the Indian Express explained section as well as from the Mint newspaper. Guys, please do hit the like button if you are liking our initiative and please do subscribe to our channel also. Now guys, taking up the overview of the today's articles. So first of all guys, into the Indian Express explained section, we will be taking up this Assam Mizoram dispute which has happened. What are the issues? We'll seeing it. Then guys, into the Mint newspaper, we will see that how the factoring business can help the small companies, because recently the Lok Sabha has cleared the factoring amendment bill. What it is, we'll see this thing. Now guys, coming on to the Hindu newspaper. So this is the page number 1. The political news has been there, not very much important, you can ignore it. However guys, here it has been provided that jabs will be provided to the children as early as August. Apart from this, you don't need to go into such kind of things because these are very evolving details. They will be changing very frequently. Then guys, below onto the page number 1, there is the article which is mentioning about the job losses into the tourism sector. So we will see that what has happened, what are the findings and how we can utilize it. Then guys, moving to the next page, into the city section, the regional news, high rains, etc. has been mentioned. Nothing very important, you can completely ignore it. Then guys, moving into this particular direction, fine, nothing has happened, and we come to the editorial page. Into the editorial page guys, this particular article talks that how into the private unaided colleges, the teachers, they are facing much kind of a problem. Guys, with respect to the theme of education, nothing important substance is there into this particular article. Then guys, this particular article talks about the Tunisian crisis, we will see it. Then guys, this article talks about the clashes between the Assam and Mizoram, we will again be seeing it. Then guys, this particular article talks about the approach that we need to take up into the Afghanistan. Now guys, on to the Afghanistan matter, many of the articles we have taken already also. And guys, even yesterday's newspaper analysis, we had taken up an excellent article onto the Afghanistan. You can see that also. Then guys, moving on. Here we can see, let's make room for a river. So guys, how we need to learn to live with the water, and into this direction, the Dutch case study we will be seeing, very good article. Then guys, this article talks about the recent Dalits portrayal into the media. So with respect to the social aspects, how the Dalits portrayal is changing, we can see it. Then guys, this article is talking about the need for an anti-trafficking law. Then guys, further moving, here we can see that the Dholavira into the Gujarat, it has been chosen as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So with respect to this, all the important developments we will be seeing it. Then guys, the other issues are not very much important. Political news, etc. has been there. The violence between Assam and Mizoram, already we will be taking it up. Then guys, further moving into this particular direction. So here on to the page number 9, we can see that the opposition, it is unrelenting into the parliament. All such kind of things are happening. Further guys, onto the page number 10, we can see that the Supreme Court had mulled the idea of PM CARES fund for the orphans. We'll see that what has happened. Then guys, the rising number of cases, vaccines, etc. are there. Guys, here we can see that the US and Iraq had reached a breakthrough with respect to the US role into the Iraq. We'll see what has happened. Then guys, into this article, we can see that the China says that China's claim into the South China Sea have no kind of basis. So all these kind of matters are evolving. Then guys, onto the business page, we can see that the departmental related parliamentary standing committee onto the industry had made some observations with respect to the MSMEs. We'll see what has happened here. Then guys, the other news are the corporate related news, nothing important here. Then guys, moving on into the sports page, there are some issues. However, with respect to the UPSC, nothing very much relevant. So guys, that is all about the overview, and now let's discuss these articles one by one. Now friends, starting up with the today's GS quote. So today we will be taking a quote from the former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan. He says, "Gender equality is more than a goal in itself. It is a precondition for meeting the challenge of reducing poverty, promoting sustainable development, and building the good governance." Guys, when we talk about the gender equality, it has been aligned with the greater developmental goals. It has been seen that guys, when we talk about the gender equality, many a times women are at the receiving ends, and when we talk about the poverty, there has been the distinct feminization of poverty, and the feminization of poverty is because of this thing that the women has not been given the empowerment. And if the gender equality will be improved, if there will be a precondition or an autonomy to the women to make the choices, they will be able to make better economic decisions, their poverty will be reduced, and in a sum total, the poverty elevation will be effective. After that, the sustainable development can be carried, because it has been seen that the women traditionally have been the responsible producers and responsible consumers, as well as the good governance can also be achieved, because at the end of the day, government and governance goal is to provide the social justice to all the sectors, and women constituting nearly 50% of the population. So if their condition will be improved, gender equality will be coming, automatically the level of governance will also be enhanced. So basically the gender equality is a very big goal, and all the governments need to aspire it at all the cost. Guys, we can utilize this particular inclusive understanding in our answers related to the GS paper number 2 as well as GS paper number 3, and even into the essays. So guys, that is all about the today's GS code. Please do utilize it, and now we will be taking up the newspaper discussion one by one. Now guys, taking up the first article. So this article has been taken up from the Hindu newspaper as well as from the Indian Express explained section. Here we have clubbed the two articles, and both of these articles are talking about the recent Assam-Mizoram boundary dispute. Friends, this particular article could be important for our GS paper number 2, where we talk about the federal disputes. Now guys, into the federal disputes, we have seen many type of disputes. For example, there are the river disputes, there are the disputes onto some of the boundaries. Guys, a few days back we have seen into our discussion that there were dispute between the Andhra Pradesh and Odisha also on some of the cluster of villages, the Kotia villages. Now into the territory within the Indian federal framework, this is a new dispute, or not a new dispute, but a emerging dispute between the Assam and Mizoram. From the very background basic, we will be seeing it. Now guys, first of all, what has happened? Just onto the Monday, nearly 200 policemen, they entered into the Mizoram, and there were the clashes between the people of Mizoram as well as the personnel of the Assam. Into it, many of the people died, got injured. Now guys, you don't need to go into the immediate factor that what has happened, because this particular dispute is very much old. So guys, when we see at the time of independence, there was a one very big state into the India, that is the Assam. Now out of Assam, guys, we have seen that into the year between 1963 to 1987, many of the sub states were carved. For example, the Nagaland, Meghalaya, Arunachal Pradesh and Mizoram, they were carved out of the Assam between 63 to 1987. Now guys, when Mizoram was brought out of the Assam, there was a particular dispute that okay, what will be the rightful boundary between the Assam and the Mizoram. Now guys, if you see this particular map of the Assam and Mizoram, you will find that what are the boundary districts. See, onto the side of Assam, there is Karimganj, there is Hailakandi, and then there is the Chachar. Onto the side of Mizoram, there is the Aizawl, Kolesib and Mamit. These are the boundary districts in both of these states. Now guys, it has been said by the Assam that the boundary between the Mizoram and the Assam, it was decided even during the time of the Britishers. Though into the times of the Britishers, Mizoram was part of the Assam, but specifically as a part of administrative purpose, the boundary was designed. And there were two important years in which some boundary demarcation into the historical times between the Assam and Mizoram has happened. Now guys, first of all, it was the 1875 agreement, and then it is the 1933 agreement. Now guys, into the 1933 agreement between the Mizoram and Assam, it was said that the boundary between the Mizoram and Assam, it will be beginning at the tri-junction of the Lushai Hills. Now guys, if you talk about the Lushai Hills, then guys, the Lushai Hills are between the Tripura and the Mizoram. So the tri-junction between the Lushai Hills. Then the next comes is the Chachar district. Guys, you can see that this is the Chachar district. Chachar district is into the Assam, and the Manipur. And onto this particular side, guys, here you can see the Manipur is there. So into this particular tri-junction, that is the Lushai Hills, Chachar district and Manipur, the kind of the boundary will be established. Now guys, on to this particular matter, 1933 boundary that was defined, the Mizoram's people say that we have a problem with it. Why? Because into this 1933 agreement, the Mizo leaders were not consulted, and it was a unilateral decision. The people of the Mizoram and now the leaders of Mizoram, they say that they believe rather the BEFR Act of 1873, it stands for the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation Act of 1873. Now, as per this particular act, what was happened? An inner line was established in 1875, and this inner line, which was established into the 1875 onto the basis of BEFR Act, it was onto it was here you can see it was relatively onto the south of the Chachar. So basically, there is more of a territory that should be given to the Mizoram. So just below the Chachar, the Mizorum's boundary or Mizorum's area starts. But the people of Assam says that not just below the Assam, but even more towards the southern side, the Mizorum's territory will be starting. So guys, here you can see onto this particular map that this particular area, it is the bone of contention. Now guys, as a kind of an agreement, what happened, it was decided that okay, we will maintain this particular area which is having a contention as a no man's land, and into this no man's land both of the states, that is the Assam and Mizoram, will not be interfering. Moreover, a CRPF post was also established here. But now guys, it has been said that over and over again, the people from Assam as well as the enforcement personnel from the Assam, they have entered into the Manipur. Fine, it has been said that many a times they had destroyed the standing crops into the Manipur. Fine, it has been said that many a times some kind of miscreants had also come from Assam. Sorry, I have used the word Manipur, it is Mizoram. Many of the miscreants had also come from Assam to Mizoram, and Assam is doing this particular thing deliberately so that a kind of a law and order situation becomes to create a kind of a law and situation related problem, and ultimate goal of the Assam is to capture this particular land. Now guys, the Assam says that all this particular thing is baseless, and basically it is the Mizoram who had started the construction around this particular territory which was supposed to be the no man's territory. Now guys, both the states are alleging this particular thing that okay, the other one encroached first. Now guys, into the recent incident that had happened, nearly 200 police personnel from the Assam, IGP, SP, DC of Chachar, DFO of Chachar, they entered. They said that they came there to regularize some of the irregularizations which were there, and into this particular thing, confrontations had happened and many of the people have died. So guys, this is a kind of a very sorry and sad state of affairs into the federal structure, where the two states who were supposed to be working onto the cooperation, now they have come outright into the confrontation. Now guys, we see nowadays many a times these particular kind of matters, not only the historical contentions are there, but out of a populism also, out of enroping the sentiments of the people also, these kind of things are being flared up. But now the leaders as well as people need to be responsible. They need to be a little bit more sensitive onto these particular issues, and amicably under the interstate council, these particular kind of things would be resolved. Guys, under the Niti Aayog, there is the Team India platform which talks about the cooperation between different units of the Indian states. So under the Team Unit platform, under the interstate councils, as well as under the various regional councils also, these particular things should be raised rather than going into the violent kind of behavior. So guys, this is all about this particular controversy. Now friends, you might be belonging to these of states, but for the sake of UPSC, you don't need to go into the nitty-gritties, okay, onto that date that happened, onto that date that happened, because the questions broadly into the UPSC are wide theme-based questions that are asked. So into the federal irritants, this is a kind of a one aspect that is coming. So that is all about this particular article, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now guys, this article taken from the Hindu newspaper as well as from into the other newspaper also it is. Guys, we can see that the Dholavira into the Gujarat, it has been chosen as the UNESCO's World Heritage Site. Now guys, with this we have the 40 UNESCO World Heritage Site, and guys, just 2 days back we have seen that Ramappa temple into the Telangana was also chosen as a World Heritage Site. Into much detail we have already seen it, that what has happened. Now guys, this is the 40th UNESCO World Heritage Site. It was into the tentative list since 2014, and now it has been given the approval. We will be seeing the brief points with respect to the Dholavira, which could be asked into the prelims examination as well as in GS paper number 1. Art and culture, architecture also it could be important. Now guys, see, when we talk about the Dholavira, okay, it is the 40th site of India. It is the 4th site from the Gujarat, and it is the first site of the Indus Valley civilization within the India to get this particular tag. So 4th Indus Valley civilization site within India. Now, guys, when we talk about the Dholavira, UNESCO had said that Dholavira is one of the most remarkable and well-preserved urban settlement, and into this particular capacity, appreciation for the India has also been made. Now, guys, when we talk about India, it dates back from 3rd to mid-2nd millennium BC. Now, here you can see that the location of Dholavira, it is there. It is into the Gujarat. Fine. Now, guys, when we talk about further about the Dholavira, okay, Dholavira was discovered into the 1968 by the archaeologist Jagat Pati Joshi, and it has been provided that it was a commercial center into the Indus Valley civilization. It was a manufacturing hub for about 1500 years, and guys, after the 1500 BC particularly, the ruin of this particular site began because of the climatic factors. We will see onto that aspect also. Now, guys, further moving, the distinct features of this particular site is this, that after the Mohenjo-daro, Ganveriwala and Hadappa into the Pakistan and Rakhigarh into the Haryana, Dholavira is the 5th largest metropolis of the Indus Valley civilization. 5th largest metropolis. Fine. Then, guys, this particular site, it has a fortified citadel. Then citadel is a upper town. Then, guys, it has a middle town and a lower town. And into this particular town, the walls, they are made up of sandstone and limestone. However, into most of the other sites of Indus Valley civilization, the mud bricks have been used. So here, not the mud bricks, but the bricks of sandstone and limestone have been utilized. It is one important aspect of this particular site. Then, guys, the next aspect of this particular site is that here a cascading series of water reservoirs have been found. It shows that effective water management was there into this particular site, and even the rainwater harvesting these people might be following. This is one thing. Then, guys, the outer fortification is there towards this particular town, and 9 gates are there with the unique designs and multi-layered defensive mechanism. So into the defensive capabilities also, this particular site was very good and important. Then, guys, 2 multi-purpose grounds have also been found, and these multi-purpose grounds might have been used for the festivities, for the marketplace. So it shows that a vibrant economic vibrancy was there, as well as for the social customs festivities also the specific place have been reserved. Then next, guys, it has been provided that here the funerary architecture like the Buddhist stupas have been found. So similar to Buddhist stupa mounds, some structures have been found here. Then next, it has been provided that here the remains of copper has been found, which shows that Dholavira was having a vibrant metallurgical industries also. Moreover, when we talk about the copper remains, guys, it has been found that Dholavira, it used to source the copper from the present day Rajasthan, Oman, as well as UAE. So as far the trade links were there, and the finished goods were being exported also by the Dholavira. Then, guys, it was also a hub for jewelry manufacturing, shell, semi-precious stones such as agate have been found, and even the timber used to be exported. Now, the decline, it has been said that from 2000 and 2000 BC, the decline of the Dholavira began. This particular time was when the region, it entered into a phase of aridity due to the climate change. River like Saraswati, they started to dry up, and drought like situation developed, and people, they migrated from the Dholavira towards the Ganga side, and they got settled around the Ganga basin. So this is the theory that has been given with respect to the decline of the Dholavira. So, guys, all these are the important aspects with respect to the Dholavira. Please keep it into your mind, because onto such line the question could be asked into the prelims. So that is all about this particular article, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now, guys, this article has been taken up from the Mint newspaper, and it will be important with respect to the GS paper number 3, economic reforms taken by the government. Now, guys, this particular article talks about the recent factoring regulation amendment bill that has been passed, or that has been cleared by the Lok Sabha. Sorry, that has been cleared by the Lok Sabha. Now, guys, into this factoring bill, what has happened? The MSME sectors, they will be getting a bigger respite. Now, before going into this particular bill, we will be taking a very basic information. What is this factoring all about? See, guys, suppose I am running a kind of a MSME. Okay, MSME unit I have. Now I am supplying some kind of raw material to a big company. Okay, suppose I am supplying some kind of a raw material or some kind of a semi-finished products to the Honda. Now there is an agreement with the Honda that okay, whatever product I will supply to the Honda for the entire month, at the end of the month, the Honda will be giving me the payment. Is it clear? But I am running a kind of a micro unit or a small unit. I also need to carry my work expenditure. I might get the money towards the end of the month, but how to for this entire month I will be carrying my expenditure. So guys, there is a particular kind of an arrangement that the factoring business comes here. Now, this particular owner of a MSME, it will be going with this factory business and it will be saying that okay, I am running a kind of an agreement with the Honda. I am supplying this particular things, and at the end of the month I will be getting the money. So whatever invoices are there, it will be kept to this factoring business, and the factoring business will give the money to the MSME at a discount. Suppose 1 crore rupee was taken from the Honda by this micro or small industry. Now the factoring company, it will say that rather than 1 crore rupees, we will give you 99 lakh and 50,000 rupees. 50,000 is rupee, 50,000 rupees our commission. Okay. Now what happened here? The factoring business, it got had some commission. The MSME, it got the working capital, as well as the arrangement which was there with the Honda, it is also intact. So it is a win-win situation for all. So basically, if we put into the one line, guys, the factoring business, they take the invoices from the MSME and give them money at a discounted price. Later on, these factoring companies, onto the lieu of the invoice, will be recovering the money. So at the end of the month, this factoring company will recover the money from the Honda. So this is whatever is going on. Now guys, when we talk about the factoring, this actually had helped the MSME sectors for their working capital needs, and it has been a very good kind of a reform. But guys, now if you want to go into the factoring business, there are the NBFC companies which need to take a specific license for going into this particular business. However, the banks and the statutory corporations which are there, they can go into the factoring business without the taking any specific kind of licenses. Now guys, when we talk about this factoring business, it has become a vibrant industry into the India, and the factoring, it is being done onto the manual basis, as well as electronic exchange is also there for the factoring, which is called as trade receivable discounting system, trades. And into this particular thing, specific platforms and the companies have also come. There is RXIL, Invoice Mart, M1 Exchange. These are such platforms which helps into the online factoring. Now guys, when we talk about the factoring, what has happened? Earlier, government had brought the Factoring Regulation Act in 2011, but into that particular act, there was one problem. It was said that the licenses will be given to the NBFCs to go into the factoring business only onto the condition if their principal business is only of the factoring. So principal business needs to be from factoring, and significant revenue should also be coming from the factoring. So only then the license will be given up. And because of this particular thing, large number of NBFCs were not eligible to go into the factoring business. Now guys, what has happened? This particular bill, which now has been cleared by the Lok Sabha, it provides that the threshold will be removed, and basically factoring business will, or the factoring sector will be open up for all the NBFCs. Whosoever wants, they can take the factoring license. So basically a vibrant competition will be there. When vibrant competition will be there, a kind of a less commission will be charged from the MSMEs, and at the end of the day, it will be good for the MSMEs. Moreover guys, it has also been provided that the trades platform which is there for the factoring, it needs to report details of the factoring transactions with a central registry that will be set up under the SARFAESI Act. Fine. So the trade needs to give the regular reports, and then all the NBFCs will be allowed for the factoring. Now guys, it will be having a kind of a very positive impact onto the MSMEs whose business cycles have been disturbed, who are facing a kind of a problem into the working capital. Now guys, if regular money will be provided to them, they will be able to basically they will be able to stretch their muscles, and the supply chain which has been disrupted, it will be coming back to the normal. Anyhow guys, when we talk about the factoring market into the India, according to a parliamentary panel report in February 2021, it has been provided that share of factoring market as a part of a GDP is very much less into the India, just 0.2%, whereas into the Brazil it is 4.21%, in China it is 3.2%. So for the MSMEs, the factoring needs to be developed, and now this particular regulation will be working on to that particular aspect. So therefore it is a very good kind of reform. So that is all about this particular article guys, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now guys, this particular article taken from the Hindu newspaper, and it talks about the impact of the pandemic onto the tourism sector. See, when we talk about the tourism, we say that tourism is a kind of an important pillar of the Indian economy. Is it clear? So tourism being a major driver for much of the revenue that is coming, guys, when the tourists go to the different places, they spend the money, okay, and that particular revenue creates so many of the jobs, direct jobs as well as indirect jobs. Moreover, the foreign tourism, the international tourism that is happening into the India, it has also sustained a vibrant foreign exchange into the India also. Now with the pandemic, the tourist activities, both domestic and international, they had virtually been suspended, and large number of people within the tourism sector, they got impacted. Into this particular direction, certain findings have been given by the National Council of Applied Economic Research. Now this National Council of Applied Economic Research has carried this particular investigation, this particular finding for the Ministry of Tourism, because they wanted to assess that what has been the impact onto the tourism sector. And it has been provided that the tourism industry is among the hardest hit due to the pandemic, and it has estimated that about 21.5 million people working into this sector, they have lost their job during the 9-month period from April 2020 to December 2020. So 21.5 million jobs have been lost. It is a very big significant thing. Moreover, guys, it has also been provided that what has happened, it has estimated that the tourism economy, or the tourism direct gross value added, it has been declined as much as by 93.3%. So guys, the tourism economy, which was a major pillar of Indian economy, it has declined by 93.3%, which is very much significant. So guys, into this particular direction, we need to take some immediate reforms, immediate steps, that how these 21.5 million people who have got impacted, they need to be given either a kind of a fiscal stimulus, or government needs to come out with a comprehensive reform that how this particular industry could be brought back. And one important thing into this direction could be that we need to vaccinate our population as early as possible, because only then the confidence will be instilled into the people. They will start travel, and all these particular activities will be resorted to the normal. Now guys, when we talk about the pandemic, impact of the pandemic onto the different sectors, always it is recommended that you cite the reports, data and findings. And into this particular direction, if the question onto the impact of pandemic on tourism comes, please cite this particular data by the National Council of Applied Economic Research. So that is all about this article, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now guys, this article has been taken from the Hindu newspaper, and it says that how our developmental plans are not very much good, they are flawed, and how we, as we have played with the rivers many times, many times disaster has come into the India needs to take some lessons. Now guys, the immediate disaster that we are talking about, it is into the Europe. You have seen that so many floods have come into the Europe, particularly into the regions of Germany and Belgium. So guys, what lessons we can take from the Belgium and Germany, how we can look towards the Dutch model of river management, all these things have been given. This particular article will be very much important for our GS paper number 3, environment, ecology, conservation, fine, as well as the ecologically sensitive development, how is to be carried. Now guys, see, we have seen that recently the Europe has been devastated by the flood. Into this particular capacity, guys, we can see that nearly a month's rain, it poured in just 24 hours, fine, and because into the regions of the Germany, and because of this, the Germany parts of the Germany, they had got impacted, and even the nearby Belgium got impacted with this incessant rains. Now guys, when we talk about this particular thing, it has been provided that Europe had far more developed infrastructure. Though this particular rain was unprecedented, but still they were not able to cope up. It has been provided that, guys, already Germany had established the network of sensors into their rivers, and into the real time they can notify that if there is a probability of a flood. These particular notifications do came, but guys, all this particular rainfall, water level rising happened into such a less time that local authorities were not able to issue the warnings, evacuation was not proper, and eventually large number of people, life, property, it got destroyed. So it provides, number one, that even after having the advanced adequate resources, advanced infrastructure, physical infrastructure, organizational infrastructure, one cannot escape the extreme climatic events. So basically, technology, organization will not be coming handy. You need to be responsible when we're dealing with the river, ecology and nature. Now guys, it has been provided, number one, what is the reason that such intense rain have come into the Europe? it has been provided that now we are emitting more carbon dioxide, and as more carbon dioxide is being emitted, the basically the airs they are becoming more warmer. As air are becoming more warmer, warm air has the potential that can hold more of a moisture, and therefore they will be having an ability to provide more of a rain. Number one thing. Number two thing, guys, it has been provided that the temperature around the pole have now increased, and because of this particular thing, they are making the movement of the storms very much slower. And now, as the storms which are developing onto the northern sides towards the Europe, they are not diffusing towards the south or into the other directions. They are standing, they are holding there, and at the same time, they are carrying much of the moisture. And because of that, torrential rainfalls that had happened now into the Europe, they are happening, and even future they will happen. So this particular combination has led to the rains into the Europe now. Number one, guys, and number two, guys, it has been provided that into this particular direction we can take the lesson from the Dutch. Now the Dutch have done remarkably well into this particular direction. What they have done, they have not only went for the advanced forecasting sensor, etc., rather they had learned how to live with the water, how to live with the river. What they have done, they have basically not dependent onto the conventional measures like dikes, dam, embankments, gates, etc. Rather they had created adequate space for their rivers. If the rivers want to overflow, let them overflow. They have widened their space, their channels have been deepened. Fine. Moreover, the floodplains, they have been protected strictly from the human interference. Riverbeds have been protected. If there will be no interference, if there will be no settlement around the river floodplains, strictly there will be no problem. Guys, you need to understand that the hazard comes when the vulnerability mixes with the disaster. Every year the river will flood, but if you bring the human population near it, what you are doing, you are bringing the vulnerability near the disaster. It will turn into a hazard such as flood. So problem is to remove the human solution is to remove the human settlements, and similar thing that is being done by the Dutch. Moreover, they are providing enough of the space to the ecology in whatever way river wants, they can flow. Further, guys, into this particular direction, India needs to learn, because we have seen in 2018 Kerala flood happened, and the Kerala flood happened because of this particular thing, that we have not given ample space to the rivers to overflow. Now, into this direction, it has been said that India needs to adopt the pragmatic policies and practices which are more nature friendly. We also need to learn how to live with the water into the long term. It has been provided that flood prone areas should be identified, and the project should be initiated onto them, that how the leg room needs to be given to the rivers for the overflowing. It has been provided that into the cities, we need to identify the playgrounds, the Maidan agricultural fields, which should be embarked to store the excess water. Then, guys, further it has been provided that a drain should be built for diverting the water into the storage units, and these storage units can be used for the rainwater harvesting, as well as the vagaries which this particular water can bring in form of flood will also be reduced. Then, guys, it has been provided that the stored water can later even be discharged back into the drainage channels. Fine. So this is the effect. This is the thing that we need to do. Moreover, guys, a United Nation Development Program plus World Bank plus European Union, they provided a kind of a post-disaster need assessment report after the Kerala floods of 2018, and it has provided that the drainage capacity of the rivers needs to be increased so that water flow is carried in an effective way. So, guys, into the short term as well as long term, we need to understand that the climate change will be happening, the rainfall will become unpredictable, and we need to live with the water but into a sustainable way. So here we can learn the lesson from the Dutch, and such reforms could be initiated into the India. So, guys, all these particular things have been provided. I hope that you have understood it, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now, guys, this particular article taken from the Hindu newspaper, and basically it is a kind of a leisure piece of information. Guys, into this article it has been provided that into the Tamil Nadu, now the narrative into the movies is changing. Earlier the Dalit people, they were shown as they are subjugated, but now, guys, the Dalit people, they are being projected as heroes, they are being projected as the protagonist into the movies. So there is a particular kind of a reformative thing that is coming, that now Dalit hero is a kind of not is a kind of an aggressive man who will fight for his rights, who will fight for the injustices. So this is one positive thing that is coming. Now, guys, into this article, many of the references of the heroes such as the Kala, the heroes such as the Kabilan, etc., has been given. You don't need to look into it. Now, it is provided that these particular movies try to understand or are trying to decode the ethics of equality which were provided by the B.R. Ambedkar. But guys, clearly they have not completely understood the B.R. Ambedkar's idea towards the emancipation of the Dalit. Though the B.R. Ambedkar gave the name Dalit to the people who have been depressed, and the name Dalit itself is a kind of a revolutionary term. But guys, the complete idea has not been taken up. Actually, B.R. Ambedkar was not completely again into the favor of this idea that the revolution needs to be carried by the Dalit people. Even guys, after the Russian Revolution, when around the world the revolution becomes a kind of a very romanticized idea, even then the B.R. Ambedkar was very much apprehensive. He believed that though in India the class inequalities are existing, but the Dalits should not go for a revolution, because guys, the Brahminical class, they are so much entrenched, they are so much powerful that at the end of the day Dalits will again be exploited, nothing good will be happening. So the revolution, as into the Tamilian movies now is being said, was not the original idea of the B.R. Ambedkar. B.R. Ambedkar actually provided that what we need to do. He said that there is a need rather to develop a democratic dialogue between the different classes, different castes, so that a better conception of the modern state and the civil society can be achieved. It was provided that the primary task was to bring an enlightened consciousness amongst the Dalit, so that they can cherish that what their rights are, what their entitlements. So he want to make them more rational, more educated, more empowered, so that they can demand their rights, they can open up a constructive dialogue. So the revolution among them, okay, going into a kind of a rebellion, was never the idea of the B.R. Ambedkar. So this is the brief idea that has been given into this particular article. Apart from this, nothing important is there. References from the movies are there. You don't need to go into that. So that is all about this article, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now guys, this particular article has been written by the Nobel Prize winner Kailash Satyarthi, and he is talking about the exploitation, trafficking of the girls that is happening. Now into the article, the report of the story of a girl Sita has been told. You don't need to go into that. It has been provided that guys, the human trafficking is a very big problem now, and it is actually not a crime in itself. Rather guys, it also propels the several other crimes. For example, a parallel black economy is created by the money that is being generated by the human trafficking. It fuels child labor, child marriage, prostitution, bonded labor, forced beggary, drug related crimes, corruption, terrorism, and many such kind of things. So therefore, stopping the child trafficking, the women trafficking is an important prerogative, and guys, now the independent India needs to consider this particular issue in much deeper light. So guys, this particular idea just have been given into this particular article, but I suggest that into this particular light guys, there is a draft trafficking again, draft trafficking prevention into the persons bill, which has now been taken up into the parliament, and this particular bill we have discussed onto the 19th July newspaper analysis at the timestamp of 21 minutes and 10 seconds. You please go here guys, very beautifully we have discussed all the provisions of this draft trafficking in person bill, as well as the criticisms also we have seen. So you just please look into it. So that is all about this article, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now guys, this article is talking about the crisis that are into the Tunisia. Guys, yesterday already we have seen the crisis which had happened, got started into the Tunisia, when the president of the Tunisia, he has suspended the government, he has suspended the parliament for the next 30 days. He had said that a kind of a crisis or a problem had emerged into the state, and to bring a stability, such kind of step was to be done. Guys, here we can see the map of the Tunisia. There is Algeria, there is Libya, here is the Mediterranean Sea. Then guys, Spain, France, Italy, Greece, Turkey, and Morocco are also into the nearby vicinities. Guys, it has been seen that when we talk about the Tunisia, it has seen the 9 governments since 2011. First of all, the Tunisia is a success story because the Arab Spring started from the Tunisia. Arab Spring wanted that into the region, the dictatorships need to be replaced by the democratic governments, and Tunisia actually got a democratic structure. This is the achievement of the Tunisia. But 9 governments since 2011 shows also a kind of a democratic fragility. It also shows a kind of a political instability, and now a new political instability has come. Guys, when we see the Tunisia's condition, Tunisia has one of the highest per capita death rates around the world. Just 7% of the population has been vaccinated. Recently, government opened the vaccination for everyone above the 18 years of age, but there was the stampede, there was a kind of a crisis that had happened, which government failed to control, and because of that particular thing, the president suspended the government, and he had said that this particular direction has been taken in order to bring more stability into the country. But guys, it has been seen that first of all, when we talk about the president, the parliament, and the prime minister, all have been a kind of a popular institutions, and they derive their authority from the constitution, and single-handedly president suspending the prime minister, suspending the parliament is not good thing. Further, it has been provided that the 2014 constitution, it has also provided for a constitutional court to settle these kind of crises, but guys, this constitutional court has not altogether been established, so again the problems will be coming. So guys, it has been provided that under the constitution of the Tunisia, the president oversees the military and foreign affairs, and the prime minister is into the charge of the day-to-day affairs of governance, and therefore both are the important functionaries. And guys, again, the parliamentary system, the prime minister needs to be restored by the president if he wants to bring the stability into the long term for the Tunisia. So that is all about this particular article, guys. Don't you need to go too much into the details, you can avoid it. So that is all, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now guys, this particular article talks about the new database that has been created by the for the farmers. Now before going into this particular article, guys, we will be talking about some of the background. See, there is the AgriStack initiative. Now friends, this AgriStack initiative is simply a way where the technology need to be infused into the agriculture, so the precision agriculture, tech-based agriculture can be carried, which will be helping the farmers to increase their yields. It will be helping to double the farmers' income also, and such kind of initiative and such kind of vision has been envisaged under the AgriStack. Now guys, into this collection of technologies and digital databases will be created. Moreover, it has been provided that AgriStack will create a unified platform so that farmers can be provided end-to-end services across the agriculture value chain, food processing, etc. Now guys, it is into the line with the government's Digital India program, which wants to push the digitization in all the fields. Moreover guys, the farmers, one particular important aspect is also the land records, and here the land records are also being digitized. Guys, the land records will be attached with the ID of the farmers under this national agriculture stack. Further guys, it has been provided that under the program, unique digital farmers ID will be created, which will contain all the personal details, information about the land which they are farming, the production that they are getting from that particular land, their financial details. Is it clear? Now guys, under the part of this AgriStack, what has happened, government had come out with a national farmers database. Into this national farmers database, all the name of the farmers have been there, but only of those farmers which are owning the land into their names. Now guys, government had provided that they will be using later this particular database so that they can carry the targeted service delivery with the higher efficiency and into a time bound manner. So guys, putting a kind of a digital technological database is a first step towards the AgriStack. But one problem has come into this particular direction. It has been provided that when we see the condition of the farmers into the India, many of them are just the sharecroppers, they are the tenants, they don't have their considerable lands, particularly towards the eastern India. So how those farmers will be given a benefit if only the name of those farmers will be there into the national farmers database which own a land? So this particular thing might be problematic into the times to come. Into this particular direction guys, it has been provided that this particular database might be later could be extended to the other people also, to the other farmers also, which who are not owning the land, but that will be done only after the consultation with the state governments and other stakeholders. But up till now, only the land owning farmers are being included. So guys, this is a kind of a good reform because of the idea, but at the same time the problems are also there as much of the farmers are not being represented. So this is all about it. And guys, the AgriStack you can use as a tech reform into the agriculture in GS paper number 3. Please keep it into your mind. So that is all about this article, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now guys, this particular article talks about the right to health. Now see what has happened. Into this particular article, it has been provided that a petition has been filed into the Supreme Court where it has been said that government had forgotten the right to health. Into this particular direction, some of the act have already been created, but their implementation onto the ground is not there, And because of this, people's right to health is not being endorsed, because guys, we have seen that people either they need to opt for the expensive private healthcare, or they need to go on to the substandard government health facilities, often where the doctors are not there, essential medical supplies are not there. So basically, people have been left at the mercy of their destiny. Now, guys, into this particular direction, the into the Supreme Court, a petition has been made that the existing regularization legislations which have been brought, they needed to be operationalized soon. Now, it has been provided that, guys, there is the Clinical Establishment Act of 2010, as well as there is the Clinical Establishment Rules of 2012, and the Patient's Charter. A patient rights charter has also been there. So these three documents, they were providing that the fees needs to be regularized, the charges they are needed to be regularized, and the practices into the private healthcare, they need to be orientated towards the people's right to health. But these particular three things have not been implemented, and because of that, the private healthcare often terms predatory onto the people, and people's right to health is not given to them. So into this particular direction, something urgently needs to be given. So guys, if you are talking about the problem into the India's healthcare sector with respect to the private sector, you can talk about these three legislations which have not been implemented. So guys, just that's all about this particular article, and now we'll be moving to the next article. No, guys, this particular article here, just the Supreme Court has proposed this particular idea to the government that under the PM Cares Fund, it has been provided that the children who had become orphan as their guardian or the parents have died because of the COVID, it has been provided that now government needs to consider that not only the orphans whose parents died specifically due to the COVID-19, they should be given the relief. Rather, any child who had become orphan due to the COVID-19, they should be given the relief under the PM Cares. Earlier, guys, the government came out with the scheme that within the PM Cares, the children who are becoming the orphan as their parents or guardian died due to the COVID-19, they will be provided a lump sum amount of 10 lakh rupees, which they will be getting after they will be turning 23 years of age. Moreover, the provisions with respect to their schooling, their health were also provided. Now, the Supreme Court wants that such idea needs to be extended to all the children who had become orphan. Fine, not specifically the ones who became orphan due to COVID-19. Fine, so within this particular window. So we need to see that how government will be responding. But till then, this is a very good idea which have been explored. So that is all, nothing more into this particular article. And now we'll move to the next article. Now, guys, this particular article talks about a breakthrough that has been achieved between the Iraq and the USA, and therefore the GS paper number 2, international relations related aspects. This particular article will be important. Guys, already we have seen that the USA is exiting from the Afghanistan because Afghanistan is not yielding much of the strategic gains right now. Now the theaters of confrontation has shifted to the Indo-Pacific. So guys, into this particular direction, after taking the exit from the Afghanistan, even from the Iraq, USA is exiting, and into this particular direction, the US president and the Iraqi prime minister, they had sealed an agreement where it has been said that US's combat mission into the Iraq, it will come to an end by 2021, and then the USA or American forces will just be playing a kind of an advisory role. Right now, guys, if we see into the Iraq, there are more than 2,500 US troops which have been stationed, and they are there in order to control the role of the ISIS. Fine. Now, guys, when we see the Iraq, into the Iraq, the invasion has been done by the US and the British during the time of Saddam Hussein in 2003, and it was said that they are invading because the Saddam Hussein's government, it possessed the weapons of the mass destruction. However, weapons of mass destruction were never found, and the Saddam Hussein, he was dethroned. But and after that, after this 2003 invasion into the Iraq state became so powerless, it became so fragile that, guys, later after few years, it became the ground for the ISIS, and then again US came to control the ISIS, and since then US troops are stationed there. So now it has been said that now USA will finally be leaving the Iraq till the end of the 2021, and this particular thing will now again be giving a kind of a sovereignty to the Iraq. Now, guys, into this particular direction, this agreement becomes very much important because into the recent times we have seen that there are many of the parties within the Iraq which are more pro-Iran, and they believe that the USA's intervention into the Iraq is going against their sovereignty, and US needs to be need to go out. and into this direction it will be bringing a kind of an important stability into the Iraq. However, guys, we need to see that completely USA doesn't withdraws, and the capacity building of the Iraq needs to be carried so that Iraq doesn't comes under the ISIS control. So guys, responsible and timely exit is needed into this particular direction. So that is all about this particular article, nothing more apart from this. So guys, keep it into your mind with respect to the affairs that are evolving into this particular region. Now that is all, and we will be moving to the next article. Now guys, this particular article talks about the recent department related parliamentary standing committee report onto the industry with respect to the government's initiative into the MSME sector. Here it has been provided that MSME sector is worst impacted. When we talk about the MSME sector, it contributes nearly 40% of the India's GDP. Into the export also it plays a very important role, but into the pandemic it got impacted. Government came out with the reforms under the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, but many of these reforms, they were just like providing them the loans, or they were the long term measures. Immediate measures have not been given by the government, and now it needs to be worked upon. It has to be provided that, number one, now it has been seen that when the MSMEs are not able to pay back the money that they have taken from the bank within the 90 days, their accounts are being classified as the non-performing assets. So this 90-day window needs to be doubled at least to 180 days. Further, guys, it has been provided that immediately large economic fiscal package, large economic fiscal stimulus needs to be given to the MSME sector, and whatever has been done, it is not sufficient. So into this direction, the government has been reprimanded. However, what government will be doing, we need to see into the days to come. So this is just the observation that has been made, and you can utilize it as a reference when you are talking about the reforms that government had brought for the MSME sector. So guys, that is all about this particular article. And guys, this is all for today's newspaper analysis. Guys, I believe that you are liking our initiative. Please do support us. Please do hit the like button, and please do share the initiative. Thank you so much.